Hello there, Drew Hanish of Whiskey Lore, and I am doing another one of my whiskey comparison videos, although I wouldn't really call this a comparison video since these two don't really compare too much. One is a corn whiskey and one is a single malt. They're both fruity. That's probably the one connection that they have in common. They both have an element of dryness to them at some point in the tasting process. So let's get into what it is that we are going to be tasting. So first I'm going to look here at the Teeling, and it is a single grain. Now the thing is with me and Irish whiskey is that I haven't been to Ireland other than to go to Dingle and stand outside of I went on the Dingle distillery tour, but I only stood outside of the Jameson, and I think it's a museum. I don't think they actually do any distilling in Dublin. And I also walked by Teeling, but I didn't actually get to take a tour because I just didn't have time, unfortunately. But I haven't had a lot of time to get into this whole thing about single pot still, single grain. And so honestly, when I bought this whiskey, I was not quite sure what single grain was going to mean. I mean, it's a grain whiskey, but, you know, from there, what grain is it? So I later found out that it is 95% corn and 5% malted barley. So you could put it up against Nika coffee grain, or you could put it up against a mellow corn. Those have the same mash bill. But a big difference is the type of corn that's used. I don't know what kind of corn they're using here for Teeling. And I don't know that a lot of distillers probably pay much attention to corn. I hate to say that because I think most distillers, you know, they take pride in what they do. But I think there's certain elements, for instance, when you go to Scotland, you'll find that a lot of them just use distiller's yeast and they don't really put that much value on the specific strain of yeast that they're using. But you go to Kentucky and everybody's all crazy about their strains of yeast, and this is one that's been passed down for generations and all of that sort of thing. So I think the same kind of goes for corn. You say, well, it's corn. But if you go to Kentucky, you'll find like Jeff the Creed uses bloody butcher corn. Iron Root out in Texas was a wonderful experience in learning about different types of corn, because they actually use 4 different types of corn in their Harbinger. So I don't know how these distilleries are looking at corn. And so I'm going to say, you know, if you're going to compare 2 different corn whiskeys with each other, and I thought about doing that, but I've already done an episode where I did a tasting of Nika coffee grain. And mellow corn is good, but a lot of people say it's just a mixer. I have a bottle of it. I don't really drink it that much. You can drink it straight if you want to. It's fine. But this has so much more of a fruity character to it. And I think the reason that this has so much more of a fruity character to it is because of how they age it. And so it's actually finished in California Cabernet Sauvignon wine barrels, wine casks. So that is going to impart something completely different from a lot of the different whiskeys that you may have tried that are corn whiskeys, which makes me want to take my mellow corn and stick it into a wine barrel and see what happens to it, because who knows, it might actually do something pretty unique to it. So both of these whiskeys are non-chill filtered. They're both around 46. They're both at 46% alcohol by volume. And we talk about the Walker scale. This one is just slightly lighter. That's a -1, and Glen Scotia 15, which is the one we'll be tasting. Actually, before we taste this one, I'll give you the reason why in a moment. This one here is... this one is probably -1, this one is 0 on the Walker scale, and that's likely because of the age on that one that we are getting a darker color on it. And this is darker than probably a normal non-age statement whiskey would be too. That probably comes from the finishing in the wine cask. as well. So lots of information there. Haven't done a tour at Teeling, so I can't really tell you about the tour. Definitely want to do it someday. And yesterday my nose was, it's interesting starting with this one. I told you I was going to start with the other one, but now I've already pulled this one up to my nose, and I'm kind of glad I did. Because when I started with that one yesterday and then came over to this one, I couldn't smell this one. And today the nose is a little bit more out front. And I think that's your nose kind of adjusts in your mind. It's the combination of the nose and the mind that you've smelled something that's powerful. Now you smell something that's not as powerful and it just disappears. So that's a good thing to keep in mind when you're going to be setting up to do a tasting of your own. So this one has, you can smell a little bit of the cask in there, a little bit of a toffee and caramel kind of thing. But it also has has lemon. And this is something I noticed throughout my tasting yesterday, from front to back in the entire experience, from nosing all the way through to the finish. That lemon kind of hangs on through this particular whiskey. Very nice mouthfeel on this. One thing I will tell you on this, you don't have as many taste buds on the top of your tongue as you think you might. A lot of your taste buds are here on the side. So let that whiskey flow down, because when I taste this and just taste it in the middle of my mouth, it tastes, I won't say flat, but it just doesn't have a lot of personality to it. But when you let it slide down to the sides of your tongue, you start picking up a little bit more of the fruit. I get a little bit more of that lemon peel. I get a little banana in there. And I pick up some of the grain, like a sweet grain characteristic that's coming in there. Has a really nice mouthfeel to it. It kind of gives you those little toffee characteristics. You can sense a little bit of a grape in there from that cab cask. The reason I didn't want to taste that one first is because when I tasted it the other day, it tasted aggressive, more aggressive than the other. The other one's a little more delicate, I think. And I didn't want to ruin it. But this is interesting. In doing a tasting, it's probably good to judge it in both directions before you invite a friend over and you do a tasting with them, and then you know which way is the best direction to go with the two whiskeys to get the right kind of a tasting situation there. The finish on that one, it has almost a mealy, I don't want to say it's off-putting, it's not, but you kind of feel the grain on your tongue. It's really interesting. And so I think that's where the corn actually imparts its influence, is on that finish, and it kind of dries out a little bit towards the end. It's got a nice long finish to it, but like I say, it's a little yeasty, and it's got a little bit of a corn mealy kind of thing going on to it. Lemon is still there, a little bit of spice, but I mean, I could see it using it as a mixer, but I could also see just drinking this straight. This is one of those that you probably don't start with, but you know, after you've been hanging out with the friends for a little while, another whiskey to get them impressed with your knowledge of and your the breadth of your catalog. So, all right, the next one we're going to go to is Glen Scotia. I have been wanting to buy a bottle of this forever. And the reason why is because I've been to Glen Scotia. Glen Scotia is in Campbeltown. Campbeltown is its own region in Scotland, and it only got to be its own region in Scotland because a neighbor of Glen Scotia, which is Springbank, set up another distillery next door. It's a partner distillery. Not 100% sure of the relationship between the two, but they're basically in the same complex. And so if you've seen Kilkerran, Kilkerran is made by Glen Distillery, which is the third distillery in Campbeltown, and by having 3, they could officially become a region. So Glen Scotia is in that region along with Springbank, Glengyle. Glen Scotia is one that I think sometimes gets ignored, and I think it's because Springbank has this wonderful reputation, well-deserved, and it's a great tour to go on, because if you go on the tour at Springbank, you get to see the entire process. It's one of the few distilleries where you can go all the way from the malt and the malting of the barley all the way to the bottling of the whiskey, all done on site. So that's a great experience. I tell you, you should go do that, but don't miss out on Glen Scotia. If you're going to take that extra long drive to get down, it's if you take a little neck down the Mull of Kintyre and you're coming down, it's at the very bottom. But if you're going to Islay, you're at the very top of the Mull of Kintyre. So just take that drive down and spend a day in Campbeltown. They used to have more distilleries. Well, I think there were around 20, there were 20 plus distilleries in the area. I want to say 29 keeps ringing in my head. There were a lot of distilleries in Campbeltown, but they all just disappeared, and a lot of them went up to Speyside, and Speyside became the big spot for whiskey. So there's a lot of history there. I had a map that showed where all these old distilleries used to be. I walked by a lot of the places. You would never know there was ever a distillery in that area, but a very rich history, and one I will definitely cover on Whiskey Lore at some point. You guys voted for this one, by the way, 71% Glen Scotia, and I totally understand that, because it is, well, it's 15 years old, first of all. That kind of helps in some ways, but age is not always a indicator of quality, okay? It's a barometer to kind of show you what this has gone through, or what its current state is. Too long in a cask and it becomes very oaky and turns me off. So there's a sweet spot. And the thing that got me into Glen Scotia is that when I did the tour, they let me taste the new make, and I could have just drank the new make. It was fantastic without any aging whatsoever. So I was fascinated to see how they would use that and interact it with a barrel, and especially over 15 years. Neither of these are expensive whiskeys. This one is around, I think I paid around 45 for that. I think I paid 71 for that. So not a bad price for a 15-year-old Scotch. Single malt. Really nice legs on that. This one has a fantastic mouthfeel to it. This one does not disappoint. If you want to drink a sweeter whiskey that ends dry, it's really interesting. It starts out very sweet, juicy, plump. I'm trying to think of adjectives that it just does. It has a very robust kind of a fruitiness to it there in the middle. I get red delicious apple when I smell on the nose, kind of a sweeter apple. I mean, I feel like I'm smelling inside the skin of the apple. It's just really, really nice. There's some grain there. There's some toffee on the nose. You get a little bit of the oak. It's very subtle though, very refined. There's just a hint of that oak in there. Oh, maybe a little citrus. I smell a little orange in there. That's really, really, really nice. That toffee is just, that part of that mouthfeel really enhances the toffee side of things. There's sweet cherries in there. It is just very, very flavorful. You don't want it to leave your mouth. It's really, really nice. When it gets to the finish, That's probably the only place where I'm slightly disappointed in it, only that it has a very long finish, but it dries out. And so it's kind of that disconnect between this nice juicy middle and then it just goes into this dry. But it's definitely a conversation piece, something to investigate with friends, see if they get the same effect out of that. You can taste a little bit of the wood char in there as well. I think the oak actually has more influence on the finish on this whiskey than it does on any other part of the whiskey. The cool part about going to Glen Scotia is that you get a chance to taste the new make. It's the only place I've been where they do palletization. Actually, not the only one. I've seen a couple in Tennessee since then. But it was the first place I saw palletization of barrels, which means they stack them this way instead of this way, which was interesting because I'm like, how do you move all these things around? But visually, it's really cool. I took a picture of it, and it just has a really awesome kind of look to it. Just different. So if you go to Campbeltown, which I highly recommend, if you need a place to stay, tell me. There's this fantastic little bed and breakfast that I stay at that's within walking distance of the two distilleries, and they have an amazing little restaurant in there, and the sticky toffee cake. Oh, man. Seriously, the second time I went to Campbeltown, that cake was a big deciding factor of me staying overnight. Definitely was. So, for me, hands down, if I see these two bottles, I'm going to have a bottle of Glen Scotia because I just a 15-year-old nice single malt whiskey, very fruity, very enjoyable. But these are two whiskeys that have different purposes to me, and and different moods. If you're in a particular mood, you may want to go one whiskey over the other. Add a little water to them, see how that changes things up. I did. I will tell you that with the Teeling, it tended to bring out more of the oak, and I got a little less interested in it. So it just depends on what you're doing. Everybody says, all right, always add water to open it up. That's why when I have my little tasting note sheets, which I don't know if I have one hereby, I put down, should you add water or not add water? Did it help? Did it not help? So that you can kind of keep track of which whiskeys do well with little water, which ones don't, which ones need a lot of water, which ones may need just a little bit of water, and that sort of thing. Hope you guys enjoyed this. If you have any comments about the video, about the tastes that I did today and what you think of each, or even questions about Campbeltown and my experience there, or even my brief time in Dublin, I will be happy to talk about that too. And until next time, cheers and slán java.